All right, so we want to get started with the endpoint now. But one thing we missed in our curriculum is that we need a serializer. Serializer, yeah. So like I told you before, serializers are like JSON dot stringify. Basically, they help they help you to, well, I say, manage the format of your data that you get or that you impute. Basically, that's just what you really need to know. And of course, it's not something difficult. We'll just create it up immediately. So you create a new file inside of the student app and do serializer.py. I think I need to slow down now. So up until now, I've sped up because everything we've done so far are things I've done in my previous tutorial. So, but for now, we are now moving to something that is really new. So the first thing I want to do here is create a class and call it student serializer. Serializer. All right, and then we want to import from serializer. Sorry, we are importing from REST Framework serializer. So let me show you how this works up here. So you can check out anything we are doing here. What we are doing is very open. So we've been able to do most of these things, like we've installed the REST framework. And next thing we're supposed to do is to import the serializer from the REST framework like this. So everything we are doing is there, and so you could just do a copy and paste like me. And then inside of here, we want to extend the serializers dot model serializers. Now, it is important to note that there is so many type of serializers, and we're not going to be covering them. In fact, if you type H here, you have hyperlink identifier field, hyperlink model serializer, and all that. But what we want is the model serializer. So make sure this is what you have. And then inside of this, we are creating a subclass called meta, like so. And then inside of this, we are creating two things. One is the model, and the second is the field. So the model, for the model, will also import from dot model like this. We're importing student. So the student model is what we're importing, and we're saying that what the model we want to use for this serializer is student. And for the fields that we want, so fields, if I'll spell that correctly, fields, you could choose to specify each field that you want, but since we are using all of them, there's no point. So we just do a double underscore all and double underscore after that. So this should be an equal to, this should also be an equal to. So I get that mixed up sometimes. All right, so let's save that. And with this, you have your student serializer ready. So what this basically does is, now that it has access to all the field in the model, it can now validate our inputs as against whatever model we already have, stuff like that. And you don't need more than this code here. Of course, if you advance, you could check more, but this is basically what you really need. So like I told you, we have many kind of serializers. There's serializers, not serializer, and all that, but we are not interested in all of that. So let's head back here, and then we now move to the views. Inside of the views, this is where we now write our API endpoint. All right. In case you don't know what the views is and how it works, please check out my previous tutorial as usual. So we'll just import a HTTP response because we'll be needing it. And then from the REST framework, we'll also want to import response. Now, if you are wondering where we are at this point, we are here in request and response. And the code we are writing is similar to what we have here. So we'll be needing a bunch of this. So we could just copy the first 3 lines here. We need the status, we need the decorators, and we need the response. So the status will just tell us the status of whatsoever operation we've done. The API view is a decorator, which helps to specify the kind of API call, the kind of verb we're using, and the response, of course, shows what we got back, you know. And that is it basically. But what I love to do is to create a basic view first of all. So it will just be home, just for, I don't know, maybe for fun or stuff like that. And it takes in a request like that, and we'll just return a HTTP response, and we say this. No, let's just say student API, stuff like that. Save it, and then we'll go back to the URL. So first things first, we need to go into the student here inside of students, not student app, inside of students, and register the student app URL. So what we want to do is just this, what you are seeing here. Paste it down here, and then we'll make adjustments. So make sure you imported the include here. All right, and inside of here, you could choose to do students like this, but I don't see the need, so I'll just keep it empty because that's how I want it to be. And then want to install the student app. So it's students, make sure the spelling is correct, student app like that, the URLs. So that means this app has now been registered among the URLs that can access it. So let's go back now into our student app. Inside of our student app here, okay, we don't have the URLs file, so make sure you create it.py like that, and then we just do a URL patterns like that, and then inside of it we create a path like that. Now for our paths, we want to also keep this empty, and by the way, we also need to import the path. So we could just do that from, we could just copy that from here. So copy it and then paste it here like that. We can get rid of the include for now, we might be needing it in the future. Path like this, and then what do we want to register here? We want to register a particular view. So the view we want to register here, let's import it from .view import home like that. All right, once you've imported it, you can now type it in here, home, and of course you can give it a name, home, like that. So now that we have this, we can save it, and hopefully everything should work correctly. I think student app, the URLs, hopefully. Not sure, I think I'm getting an error here. Students underscore app, the URLs. So let's go back and check it out. Like this, and we'll have an error here. It's telling us no module students app, the URLs. All right, we should be back online. We just had to restart the server. Yeah, we just had to restart the server, and that was it. So sometimes these things behave funny even when everything is correct. Okay, so okay, now we have the URLs working. That means we are good to go. So the next thing we want to do is to actually create an endpoint. So the first endpoint we'll be creating will be a get endpoint. Now for us to start that, we need to decorate it or specify the verb that we'll be expecting. Now note that by default it will use a get verb. All right, so let's do API view like that. Inside of the array here is where you specify the verbs. All right, now let's come down here and then define the name. So the name would be students like that, and it takes in a request as an argument, and then it comes down here. So what do we want to do? We want to fetch all the students we have inside of the database. All right, so for us to do that, first things first, we need to import the models that we have created. All right, so from .models import students like that. Now that we have this, we can now do a students dot objects dot all like that, and then we can now return a response. Remember that we have imported response at the top here. So what do we want to do? Remember I told you that we need that serializer. Without this serializer, we will run into an error. So let's make sure we import our serializer too. So from .serializer import student serializer like that. So inside of here, we now pass in the students here. So let's make sure that we put this into a variable. So students like that. So we want to pass this into here. Now we also want to specify that there will be many of this, so equal to true, like that, and do dot data. So you need to remember to add the dot data at the end. If not, you also get an error. Then I want to specify the status. So what happens when everything goes well? We need a status of 200. So all right, status. So let's do a status dot 200. Yeah, okay. So now that I have this, next thing is also to register this particular view. For every view you do, you have to register it under the URLs here for it to fly. So let's do it path like that. And then we want to do it a /student. So you recall, let's remove this from here, and this slash needs to be at the back. Sorry. You recall that I told you about how we design REST APIs. So you need to bear that in mind as we do this too. So we do students, and then inside of here we specify student. Then we specify a name too, like this, and say it is also student name. So we are now doing a get. So we are getting all. Recall what we talked about, the API design. Okay. So now that I have students, let's go back here and do a /student. Hopefully everything works well, and voila, we have everything here. So we didn't specify the get. So let's go back and specify the get. So let's go back and let's do a get here. Let's put it like this, and then hopefully this should work now. So we do a refresh and we have everything. So you see, so by default it is always get. All right. Now, but like we also pointed out in our image here, you could either do a get or do a post. So how do you identify when to do a get or do a post? So what you now need to do for you to make sure you identify everything is to create an if statement. All right. So let's come here and do a refactor and do if our request dot method equivalent to get, which we have specified here. Let's run the following code. All right, like that. So now that we have this, everything should still work exactly the same. So we can do a refresh, and these are the three items we have inside of our database. All right, but we can't add anyone now, and the reason is because we've not written the code. So let's go back here. Back here, we now want to specify if it is a post. Recall that we said a post is used to create a particular data. So we want to be able to create students. So we do an if request dot method equivalent to post, like that. We want to now do a serialize. So student serializer. Inside of this, we want to specify a data equal to requests dot data, like that. So I want to make sure that we put this into a variable as usual, and then we want to now check if everything is okay. We'll save it. So if student dot is valid, like this, we want to save that student. So student dot save. That's just it. And so what do we do after this? We now return a response. Return response, like that. And we want to do students dot data as usual, and then specify the status. So if something is created, it wouldn't be a 200, it would be a 201. So status dot, we use 201 created. All right. So now that we have this, we save it. Okay, we also need to add this post to the get here. So let's make sure we have that here. If you don't have that, another error. So save that and go back here. Recall that we don't have a post at this time, but if we do a refresh now and go down, we now have content here. So inside of the content here, we can now specify a new user. So let's do that. So let's just copy what we have here, paste it here, get rid of the ID because this one is created automatically. And then you could now add a name. So we've not added Samson here. So let's add Samson and also do Samson here. Samson. Okay. Hey, what do I use? Decent guy. Okay. So now that I have this, I'll just do a post, and as soon as I do a post, it adds it and it shows me what it adds. This is the students dot data that I did here. So this is student dot data that is here. It shows us what we've just added, and of course it tells us that it has been created HTTP 200. This is how it works, and it is this simple. And when you try to get again, you notice that we now have 4 entries. It is that simple. All right, so we've been able to do 2 out of the 5 verbs that we talked about here. So, and what we've been able to do is this one on students. So how about if we want to interact with a particular student that we've created? So we want to maybe retrieve that student, or want to put in the student's data to update it, or want to delete that student. So how do we do it? So let's get back to our code. So here inside of our code, we want to create a new function. So this function, we could just say student detail, because we'll now be working with a particular student detail, all right? So request. We are always taking in a request, all right? And the second thing will be PK. PK is primary key or an identifier, stuff like that, okay? So as usual, we want to also make sure that we add our decorator. Without our decorator, what we're doing would not make sense because we'll get an error. So the second thing here would be put, and the third would be delete, like that. All right, so now that we have this, we'll now start by getting a particular student. All right, so we want to get a particular student detail. So the first thing we want to do is to just get the student detail equivalent to students dot objects dot get. So what are we getting? A particular student. So it's going to be PK equal to PK, like that. All right, so this is the first general thing we want to do, because we'll be needing this particular student for every of these operations we need to do. So the first one is if our request is get. So if our request is get, this time around, what do we want to do? We just want to return that particular student. So we just do return response, and inside of the response, we do a student serialize, then passing that student detail, and then we do a dot data. And then what's the response going to be like? Sorry, the status, not the response. Status is going to be status dot, it's just going to be okay, HTTP 200. Okay, so we can test that out. I want to build this gradually so that it's not confusing. So let's go back here. Okay, we need to register our URLs first, sorry. So inside of here, we'll just copy this and paste this. And then remember, it still takes the same kind of URL, but this time around we're adding a particular number. So we just make the number really dynamic here. So we just put in an int and then colon, then we're adding a PK, primary key. Then here we're specifying student detail. So you could just copy this, paste this here, and paste this here. So with this, we should be good, hopefully. All right, so we're back here, and we want to get a particular student. So here we had 4 of them, but now we want to just get the second person. All right, let's try out something else. Say 4. Okay, I'm not sure why number 2 isn't working, but it seems other numbers are working. So we'll just focus on what's working. I think I'll be able to fix that sometimes later. So we can now get a particular student. So let's head back here. Everything is looking nice. So let's come back here. And you might wonder why you have the delete and the put here. both of them would not work anything because we have not created a functionality. Okay, so let's just go back and work on those things. Okay, the reason why we have them showing, I think I have multiple projects open, so let me close off this one. All right, so the reason why those other two are showing is because we've specified them at the top here. So let's add the functionality now. So let's open and say if we are doing a put, so if the request is a put, so PUT like that, what do we do? So we want to update whatever has been given. Okay, so for us to do that, the first thing we need to do is say student like this, and we say this student is equal to the student serializer. So we are passing two things this time around. First things we are passing is the data we have received, and the second is the data that is being passed. All right, so it's going to be data equal to requests dot data like that. And next thing would now be to check if all is going well, if student dot is valid like that. If that is cool, then we just want to save our students like this dot save. That is it, not more. All right, so once we have this, we also want to update like we did for the post here. So I'll just copy this one for the post. All right, and make sure you put your colon here, and instead of this HTTP, I'll just do accepted. So 202 accepted. Now that we've done this, let's go back and do a refresh. Then we'll try to update what we have. Okay, so let me copy this, copy it, paste it here. Can get rid of this, don't need the ID. So you could just change this to 55555 and do a put. So as soon as you do a put, notice that it does a refresh and retrieves for you what you have updated. Okay, and we could do this for other ones. So we say 2, it's not working for no reason, so but 3 works. All right, so let's try this for plenty too, and then we'll copy this, paste it in, get rid of the ID. It already knows what to do, and we change this to other, just add random numbers, do a put, and it's working. So now that this is working, let's return to our code here and then do the last one, which is for delete. So if request dot method equivalent to delete, what we want to do is the simplest, of course the most dangerous, because I mean you are deleting, so it's dot delete, that's all. So we just take the student that we've returned here and do a dot delete on it. So once we do that, we can now return a response like that, and we'll just give a status saying status dot no content 204. So now that we've done that, save it and go back, do a refresh here, then we delete. It asks us if we want to delete, and boom, we have deleted that. It's gone, no content. So if you try to get this again, you just hit an error like that. Okay, so let's get back and let's do this for 1. So we'll have 1. You could also do a delete like this, and if you try to get it again, of course you run into an error. But let's come back here. So we've been able to create all the endpoints that we need. This is a function-based view. We just needed 2 URLs or 2 endpoints, which are what we have here, and this is exactly what we discussed here in the REST API design. So when we come here, we can check off the serializer and check off the function-based view. So that actually concludes it for function-based views. Of course, I'll make sure I upload this. But the next thing we'll be now looking at is class-based view, and we'll be seeing how class-based view improves what we already have in the function-based view. I promise you, you'll really love what class-based view brings for us. So I'll see you in a bit.